Tamara Banks, and you're watching From Moment to Movement, a platform for Black voices to be heard, unfiltered and uncensored. Why, Taranika Bell, the Georgia State Director for the Southern Poverty Law Center, thank you so much for joining us here on From Moment to Movement, a show where we are aware of this moment that we're in and trying to figure out the roadmap to capture the moment and sort of create a movement in terms of policy and a direction on where do we go from here. So welcome.
Well, thank you for having us, Tamara, for this moment. There's lots of work that needs to be done, and so we're delighted that you're having this conversation so early to meet this moment.
And now, a lot of people have heard of the Southern Poverty Law Center, but a lot of people don't really know what exactly it is that you do. What does the organization do, and do you just work in the South?
Yes. So that's a great question. So the Southern Poverty Law Center is a catalyst for racial justice that's rooted and started in the South, because that is also the continuation of the legacy of the Civil Rights Movement, because it started in the South. And so the Southern Poverty Law Center, most of people know us by the law cases and lawsuits that we have filed. But we're meeting this moment by also having a state office where we're focusing on organizing and mobilizing constituents based off of how we can adequately meet their needs.
What does the Georgia State Office do, and where is it located?
Yeah, so the Georgia State Office is located in the Atlanta area, but we will cover throughout the full state of Georgia. And so what we do in the state office is it is our organizing arm for the Southern Poverty Law Center. We will be having community input sessions, which we've already started. We'll be talking to folks around what are their priority issues that are having a detrimental impact on their everyday life and their ability to thrive. And so with that, that is the purpose of the state office as a department of the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Are there some issues that you're hearing come to the top of the discussion point these days?
Yes, so that's a great question. We have been hearing a slew of issues that are impacting people's everyday lives. Some of them specifically have been around education. Some of them have been about inflation, healthcare, access to opportunities, and transportation are some of the ones that we're hearing each and every day as the organizers are in the community talking to folks, because a lot of that input is going to inform how we show up in community, but how do we work in community with community and not on behalf to inform the work of the Southern Poverty Law Center, specifically in the Georgia State Office. And so we're hearing from folks that, hey, like, how do I thrive in this economy? Where are the better jobs? They're talking about wages, and also talking about how do I get more access to things that I need, like insurance and healthcare options, but also transportation. People don't think about transportation, but even if there are good jobs, if I can't get to them, then that's also a barrier for me to be able to thrive and to ensure economic well-being in my household.
You mentioned jobs and the economy. The U.S. is one of the richest nations in the world, yet we have truly a problem with poverty. How is the Southern Poverty Law Center addressing that issue?
Well, that's a great question as well. We are being very intentional about our approach. So even the campus that we're developing is on the west side of Atlanta. On the west side of Atlanta, for those that do know, it is one of the areas that has been de-invested in and has some significant poverty levels throughout the full Atlanta area. And so we're being very intentional about trying to focus on our target universe where there's a significantly high level of poverty and also a high saturation of Black and brown individuals that live in that part of this thriving city, to figure out what are the issues and how do we tackle them as a collectively with community partners, the organizational resources, but also with community leading the effort. And so, you know, poverty is about addressing inadequacies. It's also about talking through racial wealth gap and having honest conversations about that, but it's also about expansion of opportunities and eliminating rather those barriers to those opportunities. And those are the conversations that we're having in community and strategizing with community members to say, okay, so what is it as a solution that you would like to see, whether that's a program or policy, or how should we go about strategizing to hold elected officials accountable to meeting your needs and helping us eradicate poverty.
There's a word that I've just recently heard called decarceration. And we all know the stats of the numbers of African American men, particularly young boys, in prison. Can you talk about the decarceration efforts and the Only Young Ones work?
Yeah, so at the Southern Poverty Law Center, de-incarceration is a pillar of our work because essentially we want to reduce the number of incarcerated Black and brown individuals that are in this system, but also focusing on younger folks because we know that they're incarcerated at a significantly high rate, and quite frankly, even the age at which they can be incarcerated, going from 14 years old is the beginning of individuals being jailed. And that's not adequately addressing the issues at hand, right? And that means that none of the issues that they're facing every day that cause them to make a poor decision. Because, right, the only difference between them and me is they made a poor decision and got caught, because I could have made the same poor decision and just didn't get caught, right? And so with that, with the Only Young Once report, it is talking about the significant amount of money that Georgia is spending. You know, this state that is known and rates themselves to be the place for good for business is also not prioritizing the same efforts when it comes to younger individuals, investing in them early and ensure that they thrive and not end up in this carceral system. And so with the Only Young Once report, what we're talking about is the cost to incarcerate a young person is about $200,000 a year. In connection, that's almost 8 times as much it is to invest in education. And at the Southern Poverty Law Center, we do believe and know from stats and research that education is the solution to eradicating poverty. So if we think about reinvesting in the younger folks instead of incarcerating them, we actually spend less money and create a pipeline for them to thrive, not be below the poverty line, and actually become a part of that workforce that the state oftentimes brag about as far as the economy and the best place to work. And so that is what that report summarizes to a certain extent, but it also talks about reform efforts. We know early investment stops individuals from making poor decisions and getting into that system. But we also know that elected officials and members of governance have a role to play in this effort, which could be diversion program and policies that reduce fines and cost of fines that create this circular cycle to getting somebody from, getting on probation to now being incarcerated for a lifetime. And so that is what that report is, a call for us to say, hey, we shouldn't be prioritizing incarceration. We should be prioritizing eradicating poverty and ensuring that communities thrive. And so we have all the stats and the information there, the cost that Georgia is spending on it, but also reform efforts and recommendation in order to adequately address this, because it's going to take all of us in order to stop the jailing of Black and brown folks, because we are so that we can think about it holistically and the holistic impact it's having on families and communities.
Just one last question as we wrap up. Kind of in a nutshell, how do you see the election in November, the outcome, setting the agenda for 2025 and years to come?
Yeah. So we have to, after the election, the first thing that we did was we listened to community. Some people were disheartened. Some people felt like there was no more hope. Some people were tired of losing. And so I think it's pivotal that we have at the Southern Poverty Law Center a state office. Because one, we took that time to listen to community. And then I devised a plan where we can win. And so we're going back to the structure of organizing, because history repeats itself, right? We're doing the same things that the civil rights leaders that started these efforts did, which is starting to figure out how can we win on the state and local level and with community, and not on behalf of them, in conjunction to letting them know that you already hold the power to win. We're just going to help you with tools to wield it. And so after the election, we thought through that process. And so we listened to what are some of the issues that you care about? What are some of the things that are coming down the pipeline from different departments that we've heard? And so how do we, as a community of whole, whether that's partner organizations, residents, and the Southern Poverty Law Center, work collectively together to educate, ensure people are aware, make it more visible, also message in a way that resonates with folks, and then we adequately hold people accountable to meeting community needs. And so that is what we're doing in light of the election. We're also, prioritizing hope, but also getting back into the work of that there's so much work that still needs to be done, but it's going to take all of us. And so we're collectively coming together and coming up with solutions to issues that people face that is affecting their everyday lives and their ability to thrive.
YT Bell, Georgia State Director for the Southern Poverty Law Center. Thanks so much for taking the time. I appreciate it. And we'll be checking in with you from time to time in the coming months. And keep being the voice for the voiceless and standing up for the powerless and the forgotten. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for this platform and opportunity to amplify some of the things that we're hearing in the community, and also kind of putting a call to action that there's so much work that still needs to be done. We plan on working directly with community in order to get it done.
I'm Tamara Banks. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on From Moment to Movement.